What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Essential Scares podcast, the only show that dares to ask the question, is it essential? I am your host, Corbin, and with me, as always, is Bobby.
Milady.
And Alan.
Howdy.
He did it.
He fucking did it. The absolute mad lad. Searched online for 20 minutes and settled on howdy.
Hey man, you can't beat a classic.
I love that in that moment you became the statistic you were afraid of.
I know, right? You hate to see it.
Oh man. Well, we have got quite a show coming for you today. We are going to be kicking off our month of hillbilly horror with one of the first and one of the greatest, the Texas Chain Saw Massacre. But before we get into it, Bobby has a spoiler warning.
I do. This will serve as your first, one and only spoiler warning for the hit film, The Texas Chain Saw Massacre. If you do not want this seminal film ruined for you, skip to the time code in the description for our essential spoiler-free discussion. You know, this movie gets a lot of hype for being essentially a Resident Evil 7 ripoff. Corbin.
I mean, think of the similarities, though, right?
Yeah.
There's so many.
Honestly,
numerous.
Too many to ignore.
Yeah.
I
I wrote that whole thing on our Resident Evil 7 episode, and they just ripped that off completely in the beginning of this movie. It's crazy.
It's kind of strange to think that somebody, a time traveler, would have listened to our episode on Resident Evil 7, went back in time to make Texas Chainsaw Massacre with that same content, and just to influence this moment.
Yeah, Toby Hooper, you'll be hearing from our lawyers.
Absolutely.
It makes you wonder.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what, though? Alan, what's this movie about?
All right. So, we have our cast of kids, our characters. They're all just road tripping around in Texas, having a grand old time. And they decide to pick up a hitchhiker. That's not the correct decision to make.
Post-Manson World.
Yep. And they go on their merry way, have encounters with this hitchhiker, eventually kick him out to only go where they were trying to go to one of the kids' properties to run
What
into...
encounters?
I don't want to spoil it here.
We're past the spoiler.
This is the
warning.
spoiler cast.
I know, but I'm just trying to give a brief, quick synopsis of what happens, and we'll get into the depth of it later. All right? So they go to a house where they explore and find people they wish they never had. Now we can go into whatever we want to.
God.
What?
Nothing. I already did the spoiler warning.
Yes,
dude.
I understand that, but I don't want to just be like, okay, so here's exactly how somebody dies. Like, no, just a quick synopsis.
Oh my god.
You know, like, imagine if we're watching Scream and I'm like, and Stu's the killer. Like, no, we don't need to do that.
Yeah, we do. Anyway, this movie owns goddamn bones.
Literally.
Yes. It's so fucking good. It's so fucking good. Everything about this movie is just like, it's just chef kiss after chef kiss. And the cinematography.
I'm so glad you said that.
Is something we don't talk about a lot in movies. We typically talk about like one or two shots, but this movie is filled with iconic cinematography, man.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that's a huge part of why this movie has remained like in the public consciousness. I mean, despite all those other things, but I mean, how many times have you seen iconic, GIFs, screenshots, clips from this? And there's so many, right? I think the typical horror movie probably has one or two shots that are emblematic of the film at large, and this movie is just full of them. I mean, it starts out with one of them, and it's crazy, honestly. I think that documentary style, that high level of cinematography it's awesome to see.
Yeah.
It's the fourth thing I had written down in my notes was this movie is shot beautifully.
It's a beautiful movie.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
Like for how ugly it is. Like it's so beautiful. I said for how ugly it is, it's just so beautiful.
That's basically the same thing I was going to say. Like it's kind of like this. The color palette is it's almost like in the mid 2010s we had the piss filter in video games. You know what I mean? Like that kind of like yellowy filter that was just across every game for a while there. It kind of has a similar feel in that, but pretty in a weird way. And I think that comes down to just physically how the movie was shot. I mean, even that intro sequence, this is probably the scariest movie we've watched so far for the show. Like, genuinely, this movie, to me at least, had actual horror and fear. And I don't really think anything else really got me there like this movie did, comparatively. Like, this movie kind of bothered me in a very particular way, because you've got these people. I mean, you got to think of when this movie is happening. It's the 1974 this movie releases. We can't, can you guys even conceptualize the idea of picking up a hitchhiker? Because I can't. Like, that's not something I would ever remotely think to do, but that was a thing at the time. So, like, it's very...
Post-Manson world was less of a thing.
Sure. But it's very much so a product of its time in a way that this movie's really great just to actually see, like, what 1974 could have been like in Texas. And I think that's special. Because I don't know that we necessarily get those, like, good shots of, like, good snapshots of their own time periods. Like, the typical slasher we watch effectively could be at any time period. It doesn't overly matter. I mean, it does to some degree, but I don't think as much as this. Like, I don't think you can tell this story the same way without it being in that, like, earlier time frame and it working in the same way.
Oh man, that Texas Chain Saw Massacre 2022, you're really talking negatively about it, even though we're going to be reviewing that in a couple
we'll see it soon.
Just jumping right into it 3 weeks early.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know that I agree with that. I mean, I think that the time period helps for sure. And I think that, picking up the hitchhiker that turned out to be not so good of an idea, that was a trope at the time, right? And you see it in a lot of movies or TV in that era. And I agree that, you probably wouldn't make a movie today where you pick up a hitchhiker and something goes wrong, But I don't think that the rest of the movie requires that hitchhiker. I think that a movie of this style, of this caliber, can be made today with the rest of it being pretty much the same, and you would just replace that opening sequence with something else that, not the opening sequence, but the hitchhiker sequence, with something else that kind of like represented the same thing. I think that that's very possible.
I just think it ties it to that specific moment in time in a way that's unique comparatively. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of how I looked at it while watching this movie. I think it kind of ties it to that 70s era in a way that I don't necessarily, from my experience, I haven't seen as well, as done as well in other films. Well, it was a big positive for me.
Yeah, I agree, right? Like, this movie, it like, I'm going to do the whole thing that everybody does on the whole, like, everybody thinks this movie is a big gore fest, but then you realize it's a slow burn with virtually no gore, and it's just this very slow burn, methodical, anxiety-driven movie. Shit that everybody does when we talk about these. But
just get it out of the way now.
Yeah, but this movie is though. Like the start is so slow, and every character is like not exactly fleshed out, but like giving you enough to know that these people are like, they feel like
they're more than just like flesh bags.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, it's just like, God dang it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and seeing what happens to them is just like, and like, if this is your first time watching this,
which it was Alan's first time watching.
It was.
Yeah. You have no idea. You know Leatherface is going to show up, and you know people are going to get Texas chainsawed, but you legitimately have no idea what's going to happen to these people, and you're all in, like, you're taken by surprise. It like, the subtle brutality of it.
Oh, for sure. I mean, even like the amount of people that actually get chainsawed is a number much lower than anybody would guess who hasn't seen this movie. Mm-hmm. Much lower.
Right.
Yeah.
I think one of the brilliant parts of this too is when it does introduce violence. And I mean, you've got the bit of violence with the hitchhiker. That's not what I mean exactly. I mean, when you see Leatherface, like,
no, I mean, you're obviously, the first kill is what you're talking about.
What I think is beautiful about that, we talked about this last week as well. The suddenness of it, I think, is just brilliant. You know, he opens the door, cracks a dude in the head. He starts twitching a bunch, cracks him again to make sure he's dead. It's so final. It's so quick. There's no fanfare. Dude is dead. Leatherface is imposing immediately. Like, it sets the level of this is the kind of person you're dealing with. And in a way that it's interesting to do it without it being hyper-gory in a movie that you would think is going to be a gore fest because it's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So that did surprise me, though. The first kill being a hammer to the skull. But I didn't hate that in any way. Like, it worked for me because it totally subverted my expectations in a really good way.
This movie, and I think, again, like, it's indicative of the lack of any real substantial gore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the only gore shot is when the hitchhiker gets run over at the end.
Yeah. Everything is almost everything is implied.
Yeah.
Like, the only bit I think I would have wanted more actual gore, the only one that kind of sticks out to me, the only one that I don't think would take away anything is when he puts her up on the hook, because there's not even like a sound effect.
That's what I was going to say. I do think that maybe a little bit of sound could help, and only because I think that one of this movie's strong suits that gets lost in the shuffle of so many other brilliant things is the sound design.
Oh, I don't think it gets lost.
This movie makes it. You know what I mean? I think that I just mean, like, I don't think people bring it up as much when you're talking about like iconic shots, and like when you think of the sound, you think of maybe like the chainsaw or like the camera, but
that's the sound you think of is a
right. But there's so much more to that, and I think that a lot of the reason why the gore works by not being there is because the sound is so prevalent that the sound and the visuals being like macabre and horrifying without really showing you anything, your brain is able to fill in like every blank you could need it to fill in. And you see this in reviews, even going all the way back to when it first came out, and especially like the original rating. It fills it in more than having it on screen could have done, I think. Yeah.
No, I agree. I'm even going to defend the scene with the hook in saying that it didn't need any sound at all. The silence of it, like the silent scream, and her just being like so unable to even like get anything out is so terrifying. Like, and it fills in that gap for you. You know what happened. They show you the hook. They show her go on it. Like, you know what happened, and like her expression, it's just a really well acted out, like, not death, but like like it's like Jesus, like,
yeah.
And her just like horror as her dead boyfriend's getting carved up, like all
which
of
again
that,
you don't see any of that, but like you
need none of it.
Exactly.
Yeah, because like that's like they show you exactly what's happening, and again, like I agree with you. It's like it's just how expertly shot this movie is that it shows you nothing but implies everything and goes, go ahead. You fill in the gaps. We know you're going to, you fucking sicko. And I say, yeah, I am. Yeah.
I think that's exemplified the most in Franklin's death. Because first off, that jump scare straight up got me. When they're like, I think I heard something. And then suddenly Leatherface is there.
Can
I was sitting in this chair.
Can you point the lad at something important for a second?
But, like, you don't see a damn thing, but you hear him scream. You hear the chainsaw. you don't necessarily, like, I agree with you. And I just think, like, that scene just really exemplifies that to a T.
for sure.
Of just,
Yeah.
have to fill it all in up top.
Well, like Franklin is one of those characters. He's the character that you want to see get it the most, but by the time you see him get it, you're like, oh, Franklin, no, like you're
Franklin didn't need to go
everyone.
out like that.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
kind
like,
of the beauty of like Franklin's character, though, right? I mean, he's like, you hate Franklin, but you also feel bad for Franklin, and he's like the comedy relief, but he's also like the only sane person in the group sometimes.
Annoying.
Yeah. And all of those things culminate with his death that is like maybe a little over the top compared to how we actually felt about him. Like, I like that in that moment, it sort of forces you to think about how you actually felt about that character and go like, well, maybe he didn't deserve to go out quite like that. Like,
no, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it's even the same thing with like Jerry, who is like such a like Jerry goes out in such a weird way, but Jerry comes looking for the couple, finds what's her face? What is her name? The girl in the freezer.
Yeah.
Gets jump scared like we all do with her popping out of the freezer, and then Leatherface goes, "Hey, yo, what's up?" And Jerry like has one like an honestly blood curdling like, "Oh God!" But like that's the first scene where you get some sort of weird sympathy for Leatherface too, because then all of a sudden Leatherface is all like just like completely panicked, like where are all these people coming from? What is happening? Like. You get this weird idea of like, I don't like, why do people keep coming into my house? I don't get what's happening here.
Yeah.
Like, and you get some idea that like Leatherface is clearly not all there.
For sure. I mean, I think that's a big part of why Leatherface works as a villain. And I think that's part of why some of the sequels and prequels don't work as well, because they really over-explain Leatherface. And it's like, the dude is just a neurodivergent cannibal with a serious like parental issue.
Yes.
And this is just how he ended up, you know, like he is one of those villains that like he's not really even thinking a lot of these things through. Like it's very reactionary, like, you know, he's just defending his house, like and that's what I think it makes him scarier that way, because it makes him seem more like just like a force of nature, almost like something that is just happening. I'm going to go a different direction. He's a force of nurture. Because he's been nurtured into a certain belief, right? He's almost weirdly the sanest of the entire Sawyer family. Yeah, I can see that for sure. Like, because he's just like you said, he's just a dude who is neurodivergent, clearly has some sort of something, and has been taught this is how you live in the world. This is life. Yeah. So he just is living it to the best of his abilities. But like if that's all you know, and you haven't been taught to question that, right? And you're just this giant hulking monster, right? Like it makes a lot of sense. Compared to, you know, say his brothers, right? The rest of the Sawyer family. And Grandpa too. Like there is a certain like,
don't like Grandpa.
Like they all work in the world. They're not like stuck at home, because like as we find out that Leatherface is the one who is like they keep him at home. It's almost like exclusively. So he has no real outside contact.
Well, and his brother is supposed to watch over him. Their dad kind of explicitly like screams at him for that. Like, you were supposed to watch your brother.
Listen. We understand the canon of these movies. I'm not going to pretend that Drayton is not Drayton Sawyer. I've used the Sawyer name. That's not even in this movie. So Drayton is the oldest brother. He is not the dad.
Oh, that was supposed to be a brother, not a dad?
Yes.
Yeah.
Really?
There's just like huge age gaps. That's why Grandpa's like so old.
Huh. I definitely thought he was the dad. 100%.
Well, it gets explained in the sequels. It doesn't actually. They don't actually say anything. It could be the dad in this one. Like you know, they don't. It's left ambiguous in this one. But Nubbins and Drayton and Leatherface are all brothers.
A scene that we haven't hit on yet, but we need to, is when I don't remember her name.
Sally?
The girl,
Sally?
No, not Sally. The girl who discovers the furniture of bones.
Oh yeah.
That whole sequence, like,
Yeah.
So at first I'm like, oh, that's a lot of bones, and then like it clicked for me, like, oh no, that's furniture.
Yeah, that's the Ed
Made
Gein
of
sequence,
bones.
basically.
Yeah.
And it just like, it just bothered me in the
We're in a
right
post-Gein
way.
world.
Yeah, I mean that's a real. That's a real thing. I mean, this movie,
Yeah.
This movie opens with a crawl that
Yeah.
heavily implies that this movie is based on true story, and the true story is Ed Gein, right? And that sequence is probably the most Ed Gein. You have that 30 or 60 seconds of just looking in that room, zooming in on things like way uncomfortably close, which this movie does a lot to great effect. And I
mean,
think
it does it in the very beginning too, to great effect.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's partially why that sequence is so scary, because surely this isn't the first time you've ever seen furniture made out of bones. That's like a Halloween trademark,
Yeah.
But the way that it's put together, and you're already kind of in the frame of mind of it being on a true story, and the story of Ed Gein, like, I think that's what makes it scarier, because you kind of, even if you're not thinking about it, that someone actually did that.
Yeah.
And
that's the thing. And that's the thing with Ed Gein too, is like this movie is like if Ed Gein hadn't gotten caught after killing, like, I think Ed Gein only ended up killing like 2 people.
Yeah.
And like he mostly just like robbed graves, which is still reprehensible and awful and terrible, and he's a terrible human being, and he died in prison, as he should have.
Yeah.
But he didn't do a lot. But like
he did less than you think he did.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. He did a lot less than you think. That's a way nicer way of putting it. That's a way more, yeah. But like this is like, I mean, even when we look at like, there's like a bunch of fucking cars that they have like out back, like they've clearly been doing this for a minute, and they've clearly been getting away with it for a minute. Like there is some like, and then you combine that with, you see a literal futon or a couch made out of bones.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, Jesus.
The chair with armrests, literally.
Arms, yeah.
I got a kick out of that. Genuinely, I saw that and laughed, because it's like, all right, that's pretty funny.
Well, so it's funny that you say that. I think that an element of this movie that gets lost in the shuffle is that it is kind of funny. And it's supposed to be kind of funny in a really dark way.
Yeah.
And it's little things like that, or like at the end of the dinner scene when Grandpa's trying to hit her with the hammer, and it takes like 3 minutes, and like it just goes on and on and on. And like,
I don't know, man.
Just a little bit funny. I think it's supposed to be funny.
I get the first bit, but that second bit,
yeah,
with him taking forever and just never, that is so scary to me.
I agree. I think it's both feelings at the same time, and I think that's what makes that really actually work and last the whole time.
Yeah. Like that's the scariest bit of that movie, is that dinner scene, man. Like, it's just like, fuck. Like,
yeah.
Like, so, right, can we talk about it?
Let's just go to it.
Let's talk about it. So, like, all of Sally's friends are dead. She runs back to the gas station that we saw earlier in this movie. Mm-hmm. She goes, oh shit. Fucking the guy who runs the gas station is Drayton Sawyer. It is the older brother. So he captures her. She wakes up like tied down to a dinner table, and they're all eating her friends. What that is implied to be her friends. And they bring down
something. Oh, sorry, you were about to.
And they bring down a corpse that she found the first time she ran to the house. She runs to the house for a second, she gets chased by Leatherface and runs to the house. A corpse of Grandpa, but Grandpa ain't dead. He just looks like a corpse, because they give him a little bit of her blood. He wakes right up and starts doing a weird little jiggy dance.
Yep.
That might be my like height of scare factor. Is just that it is. We cannot put words to justice to just how disgusting that scene is. Like, we can't. You have to see. You just have to see it. It is so
good,
so gross. so
Or he's just like, oh yeah,
yeah,
oh,
it just
like,
it's
Yep.
so gross.
I also love in that moment the fulfillment of the vampire references. There's like several points along the movie up until now where Franklin or other characters make Dracula jokes or vampire jokes, and I love that it all comes to a head in that moment when Grandpa
for sure.
actually drinks blood. It's like, again, it's kind of funny, but it is scary at the same time.
It's funny when you think about it too much.
Yeah, when you're watching it, it's like you're not laughing at all. But when you really think about it, it's like, okay, that's actually kind of silly. Yeah.
But eventually, right? They bend her over so that Grandpa can kill her the old-fashioned way that you'd kill a cattle with a hammer to
One
the head.
strike.
Yeah,
That's all it takes. He's the best.
And Grandpa can't seem to
Get it up.
hold the hammer in his hand. Get it up, right? Although that's the part of this movie that like gives me the shudders every time is when he actually hits her the one time and like you can see that her head's like the back of her head's bleeding. It's like Jesus Christ. And eventually
it was a hammer. I mean,
yeah. She eventually breaks free, runs out the back window, and Nubbin the hitchhiker comes after her with the straight razor and starts just slicing up her back.
Yep.
But let's talk about that dinner scene.
Yeah, the dinner scene.
Let's just get all into that. I have dropped all of the relevant info. Let's talk about the details.
When she just starts screaming, as one should, frankly, in that scene and in that sequence, and they start howling. It is that to me is where they blend the horror and comedy in a perfect way. Because it is kind of hilarious to just see these two fucked up dudes howling at the moon, but like the context of it just is so demoralizing because she can't do a damn thing.
Yeah.
And she just continues to scream and they continue to howl and then just laugh in her face. I think what this movie does well is it gives the audience that perspective of hopelessness in a way that is different than other films, I think, because I mean, you're right. She's watching them eat her friends blatantly. Like she's definitely put that 1 and 2 together at this point. And we the audience are just as hopeless as she is at this point. And I think it's so disgusting in the best way.
You use the word howl, and you brought up the vampire Dracula thing. It's making me realize something that maybe other people have noticed before, but I'm noticing right now for the first time, having seen this movie many times, is this movie really, by this point, is being like, is kind of almost weirdly poking fun at old horror movies, especially like old monster movies, and being like, the real monsters are other human beings. Because Leatherface is kind of like a Frankenstein, right? Them all howling as like the werewolf. Grandpa's kind of like Dracula. Like there is this like, but they're all just dudes, right? Yeah. Like even Nubbins has that weird like kind of Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, like I'm friendly and now I'm gonna cut you, like kind of thing. Like, like it's like the real monsters are people. Like is like there's that weird aspect to it that like just when you mentioned howling, it was like, oh wow, yeah, that's I wonder if that was a point. Like,
no, for sure. And like even on that token, I mean, I think that one of the things that you start seeing a lot after this movie, and it takes a little while, but is this element of, you know, people being like the real monsters, you know. Before this in old horror, monsters were the monsters. You didn't usually have, you know, person as a monster. You know, there wasn't, for every Norman Bates, you know, there was 100 actual monsters. And
giant ants.
Yeah. And like, I love that, but I do think that there is a noticeable shift kind of after this point where even when you have somebody like Michael Myers, who's like the personification of evil, like he's still a man, you know, and you see that a lot more from here, and I think that this movie is kind of an interesting transition point with that in mind, I think.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude, that this scene just it's a lot.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, she's screaming for like 5 straight minutes.
Yeah.
Close-ups on her mouth as she's screaming, close-ups on her eyes, and like I think what like her eyes are so brightly colored against like the dimness of the rest of the room and the horror that's everywhere. And Alan mentioned it, Bobby mentioned it, they're clearly eating her friend, but like the word cannibal is never used. They never say that they're eating people. You're forced to put the puzzle together on your own, and you kind of have no choice but to do it because it's so obvious, but they refuse to tell you. And
the genius of this movie is they never give you anything.
Yeah.
They just give you enough to go, now you tell me what it is, motherfucker. And it's just like, but I don't want to. I don't want to tell you what it is.
Yeah.
This movie is the kid kicking and screaming, not wanting to get a shot.
Yeah.
You know it's gonna happen. You know how it's gonna be, but you're just gonna refuse to do it. Damn it.
Yeah.
I know I'll get a sucker at the end of this, but I don't wanna.
Is it even worth it? You have to wonder. Yeah.
You can get for like $1. I can get like a 30-pack.
Why do I have to get this damn shot? This is bullshit.
So after the dinner scene, right, we get a second chase sequence with Leatherface and Sally, and Nubbins. A great short chase. I think that the chase in the forest is one of the best chase scenes in all of slasher history.
Yeah.
But that last chase sequence, right? She escapes the dinner scene, jumps out the window, and runs away.
The second time.
True. And that sort of becomes, from there until the end, one of the most remembered in like the cultural consciousness parts of the whole movie.
I've seen this ending scene before I had seen this movie.
I think more people have seen the ending, the last shot of this movie, than have ever watched the whole thing.
I mean,
it's crazy.
It's iconic.
Yeah.
It's that and the scene where she's walking up to the building to the house for the first time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, the other girl, not Sally. Yeah.
How do we feel about that final like chase sequence? How do we feel about the way that Sally escapes? You know, the demise of some of the Sawyer family.
Of Nubbins, baby.
Yeah.
Nubbins gets hit by a truck.
Yeah, for real.
He gets exploded by a
truck.
truck.
That truck driver is
he is the MVP.
But we also never know what happens to him.
He just runs. Yeah, he just gets out of there.
I'm forced to assume he survives because he did everything right.
Yeah.
He followed the rules to a T. Oh, there's bullshit. I'm out.
Kills Nubbins, gets her in the car, sees Leatherface, throws a wrench at him, and just fucking bolts. Like
Chad move, if we're being honest. Like
the first instance of the first movie breaks the stereotype that the black guy dies first. The black guy doesn't even die at all in this movie. He just gets the fuck out.
Yeah. One of my favorite parts of that very ending is between the truck driver and then the unseen guy who drives the pickup truck who picks up Sally. We have this sort of understated heroism from random people that I feel really contrasts, right, the viciousness of the random people that are the Sawyers. You know, like in the beginning of the movie, they pick up Nubbins, and that turns out to be a bad idea. But then at the end of the movie, that random guy, you know, he saves Sally by just picking her up. And I like
the duality of man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I never thought of it that way, but yeah, like it is really interesting to be like, yeah, bad things can happen to people if you pick up hitchhikers, but also like be kind to your fellow man. Like there is this weird, like, you don't know who you're going to be saving. Like, or it's almost like, don't pick up hitchhikers, but if you see someone in distress, help them out. Like that
yeah, there's a line. Yeah.
yeah. It's almost like they're putting a caveat in their own message of being like, hey, don't pick up random people on the side of the road unless they look like they're seriously in trouble. Like,
right.
Then pick them up and help them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alan, you've seen the ending of this movie, but this was your first time watching the whole movie. How did this final sequence change for you now that you had the rest of the movie in front of it?
So without the context of everything that had happened, that from what I'd seen of it, it always felt hollow because I had no idea what led to final girl has ran away and has escaped.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what helps sell it is like Sally is so perilous the entire time. For a half hour of this movie's runtime, she is screaming, running, and acting her ass off. Like, that I think is something that cannot be understated, is the acting that this actress did for that role, for that huge chunk of time, is insane. And then when you compound that with just everything she goes through, and she gets away, and she cries, and then starts to just laugh hysterically. It is beautiful. Because we've talked about many times, horror and comedy. They're always together. They're inseparable in many ways. And I think she shows that beautifully when she escapes Leatherface and is just riding into the sunset. But, well, sunrise technically, but still the same,
Yeah.
Better even.
Yeah. Now you got the whole day for
days.
you.
Exactly. Yeah.
She can get a jog in,
Yeah, get a quick little workout,
Grab some breakfast.
Yeah, have some. Oh, you're in Texas. Get some nice Tex-Mex
Barbecue.
food.
After she,
She's
in
never
between-
eating
in
barbecue
between-
again.
for a little bit.
in between hysterical laughter, she can go stop at a diner, get a nice cup of coffee,
Oh yeah.
mourn the death of her brother,
And all of her
and
friends.
boyfriend and two best friends. Yeah,
Yeah. Just a typical
have
Wednesday.
a mimosa. Yeah,
No, a tequila sunrise. Come on, come on.
That's,
Would be a mimosa.
that's right. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. After the evening she's had, she needs a good tequila
Yeah,
sunrise.
she needs to step up that alcohol percentage.
A delicious
few.
Bloody Mary.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that would be an ironic drink.
Yeah, for real.
There's one thing I kind of want to shout out from the dinner
Yeah.
scene that I forgot about.
Okay.
So there's this whole sequence where the brothers are talking, and the older brother, Drayden, right, is the name, is saying he doesn't kill. He doesn't kill.
Yeah.
He just gets people killed, but he doesn't kill.
He does the cooking.
That's
He
right.
says to Sally, there are some things you gotta do, doesn't mean you gotta like it. And that is terrifying.
Yeah.
Because it's someone who clearly is not exactly firing on all cylinders and is justifying their actions in a way that you can understand, but it's still like, it still just feels so...
He knows what he's doing is wrong.
Exactly.
But he's still choosing to do it. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's what makes him probably the scariest of the three, is because he has the full full mental faculties, basically. Like, he's making the immoral choice every time intentionally, whereas the other
you can
ones, they're they're set up in such a way that they almost can't not make that choice. Nubbins, he kind of sits on the edge.
Well, so Nubbins, I know the actor was trying to play off schizophrenic, because I know he I watched an interview with him, and he was saying I had a schizophrenic brother or cousin, and while he was never a violent person, I was like, well, what if we took this to a violent tendency? So he was he's a violent schizophrenic, and then we talked about Leatherface's ambiguous neurodivergency, right? So and then there's Drayton, who's just I'm just Yeah, but I love the meat. Like,
Yeah.
hey man, he wins chili competitions. What can we say?
That is true.
I don't like that.
He wins chili competitions. What do you?
Yeah.
What,
That's canon,
what do
Alan.
you-
That's canon.
Yeah,
Hate that.
he's a Texas chili champion.
Yep.
Mm.
There's really nothing else to be said. He runs a he's got a food truck.
Yep. A chili truck.
Yeah.
Just drives them to every local county's chili competition. Wins. Leaves.
That's
Oh,
that's
man.
power. move, all right.
Refuses to elaborate.
Yeah.
He's got to do it, you know. Doesn't mean he's got to like it, but he's got to do it.
That's right. But hey, Bobby said it, and I don't have anything else to say. How about we rate this bad boy?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. I'm gonna go ahead and go first. I think. Oh, you know what though? Hey, we rate movies 0 out of 5 with half points allowed. So anywhere from a 4, 4.5, etc. is totally valid. With that in mind, I'm going to just go ahead and give this movie a 5 out of 5. I think surprising no one. We didn't really say anything bad about it the entire time. I don't have anything bad to say about it. I think that this is one of the best horror movies of all time. It's still scary no matter how many times I watch it, and it is effective at everything it sets out to do. I think it's one of the most perfect 5 out of 5s that there could be.
Bobby, take it away.
No,
Oh,
Ellen, you go.
No, yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. I am also at a 5 out of 5.
There it is.
It was. I watched. So, this movie, I had just a phenomenal time watching it. And I don't say that lightly. Oftentimes, like, when I'm watching movies for the show, I'll have to, like, go and do things. Like, I'll have to stop, and it sucks. This movie didn't happen here. All right, I was locked in the whole duration. It just captivated me. Because I was expecting one thing and was given something entirely different, and it wasn't like... I had high expectations without having any expectations, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
It's a very strange place to be in, because, like, I know in my head, like, this is the Texas Chain Saw Massacre. Like, this is lauded as one of the greatest of all time. So I knew that going in. It's hard not to know that, even if you haven't seen the movie before. But I didn't know what the movie was as a whole. I just really didn't. And it thoroughly surprised me and made me go, huh, maybe there's aspects of horror movies that, or other movies that I need to give a chance. Like, that's kind of what this movie's done for me, is maybe go, there's things I probably would have otherwise never watched that I probably should. So, 5 out of 5. Pretty easy 5 out of 5.
Bobby.
It's rare for a movie this influential, this trend setting, this just starter of a movie to be this both technically and artistically good. The Texas Chain Saw Massacre is a beautifully macabre movie. It is fantastic. The entirety, right? There are a couple movies in this entire genre of film that have created modern horror. And this is one of them. So much so that I am willing to break our own scoring system and give this a 6 out of 5. This movie is beyond reproach. You can't beat this one. It is not my favorite horror movie. I want to make that clear. but
Yeah,
it
I agree with
is
that.
it is the perfect horror movie.
Yeah,
So it is a 6 out of 5.
I love that. I
Yeah.
can't even disagree because, like, I think it's got a little bit of something for everybody. No matter what kind of horror fan you are, it's here.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well,
Bobby breaking the scale.
it had to happen one day. It took us 35 episodes.
Not even a lot. Not
Yeah.
even a lot. Yeah. I almost didn't do it, but it's the Texas Chain Saw Massacre. I had to do it for this one.
Yeah.
I won't even
Fair.
do it for movies that I consider my favorite horror movie. Right? Like when we eventually do Evil Dead 2, I'm not gonna give that a 6 out of 5. I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 5. Spoiler warning, but yeah.
For whatever we do horror comedy month later this year, there's Bobby's score in advance.
Allen Island.
Oh man, yeah,
Big time.
honestly.
I'm
Anyway,
gonna yell at you a lot.
It's gonna be a rough month.
that's gonna be a contentious month for Alan.
Oh yeah.
It's okay. Gore month will be a contentious month for me. So yeah.
True. So moving on to our next little bit here. If you've listened this far, you probably can go ahead and guess on the answers. But if you're skipping ahead, this is where we talk about if the movie is essential to horror or not. Completely spoiler free. And if you did skip forward, our scores were a 5 out of 5 from me, a 5 out of 5 from Alan, and a 6 out of 5 from Bobby. Is this movie essential, gentlemen? Going in a completely different order, Alan, why don't you start us off? This was your first time watching it. If you skipped ahead, Alan watched it for the first time for this episode. Me and Bobby have seen it several times, and that's why we're starting with Alan.
So it's rare that out the gate with the essential part of the show that I just go, I want to spoil everything here. Like, I don't often have that problem because, it's pretty easy to kind of codify my thoughts and kind of explain them in a way that doesn't spoil anything. But it's almost harder to do that here. And I think that's because of how important this movie probably is to horror. Mm-hmm. It's not that you want to spoil it to explain like why it's essential, because it is. But you want to explain it because you want to like go into detail, like these are the cool things that make it essential. It's like, I'm real excited. I want to talk about it. I mean, we just had a whole discussion about it. You could have listened. You skipped here. You could have listened to it. Maybe you did listen to it. I'm glad if you did.
Almost everybody listened to that bit.
They should.
It's the Texas Chain Saw Massacre.
Yeah.
But like, every part of me just wants to go into all the details. But I can't because the way our show is structured. But all that is to say, this is probably one of the most important movies in horror. And it earns that in spades. So yes, it is absolutely essential.
Nice. I'm going to go ahead and just off the bat, agree. Of course, it's essential. Everything that Alan said is totally true. It is one of the most influential horror movies of the last, it's been almost 50 years. And it's crazy to think about this movie being that old because when you watch it, it doesn't feel like it's that old, but it is. It feels so much more modern than it actually is, and it has little pieces in it for every fan of horror. It's beautifully macabre. It's shot wonderfully. The sound design is A+. And it is, on top of that, like, it's violent in ways that you don't expect, and it's horrifying in more ways than you think it's going to be. If you haven't seen it, you really, really should. And if you have seen it, then you totally know what we're talking about. Of course it's essential. Bobby.
Me? If you skip to this point, and you because you didn't want this movie spoiled for you, you just want to listen to the episode, stop what you're doing. Stop what you're doing right now and go get a free month of Shudder, or go find it somewhere, or pay for it. You should pay for it because this movie deserves to be paid for, and go watch this movie. right now. This movie, the historian in me likes to break things up into eras. And I believe that there was an era of horror that was very much like monster movies and like, thrillers and that kind of macabre stuff. This offset the modern era of horror. That you could argue that we are currently in, or that we are currently leaving, if you're like me and believe like this whole elevated horror thing is just a new era of horror kind of becoming its own thing again. That we've run out of ideas that spawned out of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, right? This movie is beyond reproach. It's so good. And if you're still listening to me and you haven't watched this movie, stop. Go watch it right now. It's essential. It's beyond essential. Yeah.
Alan, it looks like you have something to add.
So I was curious because, this movie, we've talked about it. It's essential. I was really hoping that I would do this Google search and proven to be right, but I was wrong. I was curious if it was enshrined in the Library of Congress, because you brought up the historian point, Bobby. And this to me seems like a pretty good example of a movie that should be. It's not.
Horror movies will never be enshrined.
Oh, there's a few in there. The
Like
Shining
what?
is in there.
Okay.
Silence of the Lambs, Jaws, Rocky Horror Picture Show, Halloween, as it should be.
Rocky Horror Picture Show is not a horror movie.
Look, man, this is what
It's got horror
Screenwright's
in the
got is
name.
horror movies. All right, The Exorcist. Well, of course that's in. And then like it's every one of the classic. Dracula, Frankenstein, King Kong, Bride of Frank. Like these are all within there too. But this to me is one that probably needs to be thrown in there. I would say.
I think that
Just as an added layer.
Horror is one of the foundational genres of film. And there should be more in there, and there just isn't. And the reasons for that are vast, and the excuses are not good enough. Yeah. But hey, you know what?
Tell them again.
Speaking of the Library of Congress, what have you guys been up to? Where are your handles? Bobby, kick us off.
Yeah, I would love to. You can find me at twitch.tv/theredweenie. All of my relevant socials are linked there. I am doing nothing relevant right now because in 23 days, I will be married by a betrothed, producer Mallory, who runs our Instagram page. What you cannot see just out of frame is literally boxes and boxes of DIY decorations that we have put together. And that is how I've been spending most of my time. That has not been on work or the few hours a week I get to play Destiny, which I do and I enjoy. After the wedding, you'll see me streaming all sorts of content. I'll probably stream Pokemon. I'll probably stream Elden Ring, and I'll probably stream a lot of Destiny. Because my goal post wedding is to try my best to stay up to date, so that when we hit raid, so that I am not the reason why we don't do world first when raid time comes up.
But Bobby, you could be like me and be dragging the group down in Destiny. Don't you want to be like me?
That'll be I want them to blame you, actually.
Oh, I'm gonna play hard.
Yeah, the plan is to have you be the blame and not me, or have me be close enough where, like, if you weren't so far back, that you guys could have just pulled me through it. Yeah.
It's time to pass that blame on.
Yeah. But yeah, that's what I've been up to. Really excited for those games. Really excited for. I can't lie. I'm not excited at all for the new Texas Chainsaw movie. I watched the trailer. Out of the three of us, I'm the only one who has. That movie looks like it's gonna be a dog shit, and we're gonna review it. So
Yep.
Hey, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022. Netflix, pay me money, and I swear to God, I will shill for you hard.
5 out of 5. Wow, just as good as the original. Oh man. Well, hey, you can find me anywhere at Corbangarang. I'm pretty active on Twitter and sometimes on Instagram. You can find me talking about Destiny and Halo and games and movies at large. Sometimes I tweet about my hobby streak, which I promise I haven't broken, but I always forget to tweet about. On the side, I have been doing that, building, painting, playing Warhammer, which I absolutely love. I have been reading finally the first book in the Horus Heresy. If you're into Warhammer, you know what that means. And
it's cool.
Yeah, it is actually pretty good. And then I have been playing, and I'm sure Alan will mention this as well, Pokemon Legends, Arceus or Arceus. I'm not really sure how to say it.
Arceus. It's God. It's Pokemon God, dude.
See, yeah,
pay
that
attention.
I know. I always thought it was Arceus, and then I thought I heard them say Arceus in the TV show, and I was like, maybe I'm just wrong.
No, that's correct. But
They
it
say it
sounds so pretentious.
They
Okay,
say it
thank
wrong.
you.
They say it wrong in the show.
Yeah, right? So that I've been playing that. I'm only about 3 hours in. It's like surprisingly good. I don't know. I had high expectations, but so far it's very, very enjoyable. There are some little things that I would nitpick. It's certainly not a 5, but I do like it a lot. But hey, that's me. Alan?
You can find me at a seal punter just about anywhere where you can see me tweet that I got the Bloodborne Platinum just last week. Working my way towards getting the Sekiro Platinum. I have this strange fascination of platinuming the From Software games because I love them. So I'm eventually going to get all of them. That's going to take a lot of time though. I have mostly been playing Pokemon Legends Arceus, and when I say this is the Pokemon game that, like, your brain filled the blanks in for, that I think is the best way to describe this game. Like, this is the game this is the game your imagination made you play when you played Pokemon Red in 1998 when you were 6 years old. Like,
Oh man, I can't wait to get a Mankey.
I don't know if Mankey's in the game.
I haven't seen any Mankey.
I have not seen a Mankey.
Well, this game's trash, garbage tier.
I told you it wasn't a 5. I told you.
It has its own problems. For example, there's no online battling, which I didn't know until like 2 days ago, which bothers me a lot because I love the online battling in Pokemon. But that's mostly what I've been doing, is that, and I shoveled my damn driveway before this podcast because we live in the Midwest and we just all got slammed with like 1.5 feet of snow.
It was great.
Imagine not having a snowblower.
Could be me. Did that manually.
Yeah.
Corbin, where can we find the podcast?
Oh, you can find the podcast anywhere at Essential Scares. We're super active on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And we'd love it if you joined the Discord, which is linked everywhere. We're active on there as well. We love talking about music and movies. Come join. Come say hi. Let us know. On that topic, if you liked the show, let us know. Tell us what you liked about the show. Share it with your friends. Share it with your family. Let them know. It's all about just telling people things. It's a podcast. That's what it's all about. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Next week, we're going to be discussing the original Wrong Turn. Thank you to Alan and Bobby for being on the show this week, and I have been Corbin, and this has been Essential Scares.
Play that breakdown, baby.
I hate all of that.
Wow.
Where the fuck am I gonna have the breakdown baby come in?